Gary Vee, Tony Robbins had a video on YouTube where they were saying, hey, you can start a podcast and get a cheap mic on Amazon. And I started a show called
Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, a podcast for those who are in and around the hospitality industry.
It thankfully took off within a year. Every business now is starting to look at themselves as kind of a Red Bull. They portray and advertise that they make a drink, but in reality, they're a media company. Something for a lot of entrepreneurs to be aware of is look, if you're not trying to create a media business, don't create a media business. Be okay if you have 1,000 viewers or 100 viewers. The quality of that audience is better than the quantity of an audience that maybe doesn't give a crap. We are not going to be a Joe Rogan or a Alex Cooper or whatever podcast, but really we're going to generate a quality list of eyeballs or ears and get 300 people in a room. I know plenty of brands that would pay a good amount to be in that room. Now it's no longer just, hey, I'm going to start a podcast, or hey, I'm going to start a YouTube channel. It needs to be
Property management at scale is about more than just rent rolls and maintenance calls. It's about protecting your assets, delivering stellar guest experiences, and scaling operations without losing quality. Welcome to Minute by Minute, the show where industry leaders share unfiltered stories, proven strategies, and real solutions for operating at scale. I'm your host, Nils Mattisson, CEO of Minut, and together we will dive deep into what it really takes to keep your properties safe, efficient, and protected. Let's get started. Today I'm joined by Wil Slickers, the founder of Hospitality.fm, the podcast network that was acquired by Skift in 2025. Wil now serves as Skift's Director of Audio and Video Strategy, and before that he co-founded Recreation Vacation Rentals, a boutique vacation rental management company based in Seattle. Wil has spent the last several years talking to founders and professionals across hotels, restaurants, vacation rentals, and travel, helping brands grow through storytelling and content. In this conversation, we explored how a $50 microphone accidentally became a media business, why B2B content creators should stop optimizing for the algorithm, and what a camping trip with no Wi-Fi had to do with selling his company to Skift. Wil, welcome to Minute by Minute.
Nils, it's so good to be here. It's kind of crazy though. We're flipping roles on this episode. I'm used to interviewing you, my friend.
Yeah, and that would probably make for the better episode, but we'll save another one. We'll do another one for that. Now I want to hear your story. So I want to hear how you started your career and how you came into this intersection of hospitality and media. And maybe we can start with what made you realize that the content and the audience would become the real business rather than maybe what you were actually doing.
It took me kind of a minute to figure that out. No pun intended on the name of the show, but it did take me kind of a minute to figure out that this was actually a business rather than just scratching the itch of curiosity that I had. And so kind of rewinding back, 7 or so years, I was a hotel manager and I always have kind of struggled with school. So going to hospitality school or some kind of program online or in person wasn't kind of the route I was wanting to get in order to elevate my career in hospitality. So I was looking for mentorship, and I remember the hotel owner that I was working for promised me all the things under the stars, right? I'll mentor you. I'll teach you everything on how to run and own a hotel. And one day you can own your own hotel and blah, blah, blah. Well, that never happened. So I was just busy working. And I was a big fan of Gary Vee, still am, watch a lot of the content. And Tony Robbins and him had a video on YouTube that I found where they were saying, hey, you can start a podcast out of anything. If you have a curiosity, a question, just any kind of drive at all, you can get a cheap mic on Amazon, go to anchor.fm to get your hosting software, and then hire someone off of Fiverr for a intro and outro video or music. And so I was like, all right, that sounds pretty doable. I have $50 I can spend on this. And so I spent the $50 and I started a show called Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, where basically I was just interviewing people from my own curiosity on revenue management, on housekeeping operations, on maintenance, and just overall hospitality guest service and how to deliver great, hospitality moments for your guests and anticipate their needs and all the fun things, right? And it thankfully took off within a year. I had a year under my belt and I started making sponsorship money. And the sponsorship money was a whole phenomenon to me too. I was so confused. I was like, I actually make money from this? Enough people cared to give me money to have these conversations, which was wild. Because I was just trying to do my own thing for my own career. That's all it was. And just kind of putting it out there on public. I had no plan or model of how to monetize or to make it a business and quit my job. But yeah, that was basically the start of it all. When I saw that people were willing to pay to be an advertiser on the show, then it was like, okay, that's where the light bulb moment really clicked.
There are so many people on this podcast, when I asked them about how they sort of came into the industry and how it started, where there is a bit of an accident. But what they all have in common is this like sense of entrepreneurship and curiosity, and they sort of enjoy that hustle, I think. And I'm getting a little bit of the same sense from you. So when you then saw that this what Slick Talk was getting traction, like what was the thinking around making it a real business? Like when was the time that you dared let go of your day job, if you will, and become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I got my first sponsorship, I think pretty like maybe 7 months in. And I said to myself, oh my gosh, like this is basically like 1 month sponsorship was basically 2 months of paychecks. And I was like, oh, okay, this is nice, but it's not sustainable. I don't know if this is going to happen again next month or the month after that. So I told myself, if I can do this for 6 months in a row, then I'll quit. And then so we did 6 months in a row, and I created a podcast series, so that made 10 grand, and I created this, and then that made more money, and then this made money. And I was like, okay, we've gotten to 6 months. We can, I've, saved up away a lot as well. I was squirreling a lot of my paycheck, into a savings account for a rainy day. And I remember the last day of my hotel job, it was December 19th of 2019. So right before COVID. It was a great time to take a massive risk. And I remember walking to my boss's office. I gave her, before December 19th, I gave her 3 weeks notice and said, Christine, I love working for you. I love this place, this hotel, but I've been doing this podcast thing and it's taken off and I'm able to go full time. And I also, during that journey with the podcast, I actually discovered a lot more about short-term rentals because I was mostly a hotel guy. So I was talking about hotel things. But then I forgot the company that wrote this blog. They wrote this blog on like the top 10 short-term rental podcasts, and Slick Talk was referenced on there for an episode I did on Stay Alfred. And for those that don't know, Stay Alfred was a urban operator that unfortunately closed during COVID, but I did a couple episodes on them. And so that somehow got me on the short-term rental list. And gave me more, interest into the short-term rental sector. And I started my own property management company during that time as well. So kind of went all in because my mom and dad also, it's a long story with the Airbnb short-term rental thing, but they were like, hey, we'll give you a property to manage on Airbnb. It's like a hotel, right? And I was like, exactly. It's nothing different. In reality, it was very different. But so started those two businesses at once. And the short-term rental stuff really took off on the podcast, which then really took off into our management company as we implemented a lot of the conversations and tools like Minut and Wheelhouse and Hostfully and all these like companies that we were talking to. It was like, okay, this is how we're going to build. Like we use the media to build the management company. If that makes any sense, but yeah, kind of a two-sided sword on that side.
As an employer, you're never happy when, your good employees come and, they have, another plan for their next chapter. But my favorite ones are the ones who come and say, I'm going to start this thing, or like I'm going to take a risk. So, and I'm sure it was the same for your employer. So I'm sure she was a little bit proud of you as well. So having started the media business, like, did that make it easier to then go into the property management side?
I would say it made it a little bit harder just because my co-founder and he was actually one of my first guests I had on the show. So he was like guest number 2, I think. And so what was really cool is that I did have a business partner to help with that. But as the media took off, it actually became my full-time thing. Like it wasn't, the property management is my full-time thing, and then the media is powering that and like feeding it. It was, no, the media is your full-time thing. And then this property management company was kind of like your side project. Mm-hmm. And so he was taking that on full-time. I was taking on the media full-time and then giving hours away to work with him. And we did that for a couple of years, through the COVID time of like, obviously COVID, and then to like 2023. And then around 2024, we both realized like, hey, this isn't sustainable. He's doing all the work. I'm able to give X amount of time or X amount of, connections or, whatever, to him and the company. And it really just became like, okay, like I need to take care of the media business that is taking up all my time. So it really took a couple years, but it was, the opposite of what people would think. It was really the media became the full business. Because in 2020, we launched a second show called Good Morning Hospitality. And that was really just kind of like also accidental. It was just me and a buddy that were really doing a Slick Talk episode, and realized that during COVID, a lot of people were afraid to put any information out because obviously, things were changing every 5 seconds. So it was, we're going to, flatten the curve or do this or do that. And everyone's timelines of when things would open would really change. But thankfully, when we launched that show, it became a really good outlet for us to stay connected and for other people to kind of stay more informed on what's going on the broader side of the industry. Which then that spun into a podcast network. So hence why that took up so much time, because then when you have not one show, but 2 and then 5 and then 10, and I think we had 47 podcasts under us that we were managing, from production and sponsorships and all the fun stuff. So it really became this all-in type of business. That made it really hard for the vacation rental management company to earn a lot of my time. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question there.
Yeah, I love that there's an accident. There's always a happy accident.
There's always a good accident
at the beginning of people's careers. But this breadth of podcast, like, it's given you a front row seat to a lot of different parts of the industry. And of course, you have your own direct experience with the hotel, your direct experience as a property manager. But what have you learned here that has really surprised you about the industry?
I would say it's kind of the expected surprise, I would say, because like you said, a lot of us accidentally have stumbled into this some shape or form. And to be honest, I was, I still am a young guy, but I was younger when I started. And so I was, I'm looking at people that have started businesses and have exited and have raised capital from venture and private equity and all these things. And kind of like that moment of imposter syndrome, definitely kicks in. So then you have all these conversations on the show, and you realize like a lot of us accidentally stumbled into this. Like a lot of us weren't, I'm going to go, like, growing up to be like, I'm going to create a tech company. I'm going to create a property management company. I'm going to create this. Like, we didn't all have this expectation of where our lives are today. And so I think for me, that was the unexpected but expected surprise, was to see that I was feeling this moment of insecurity where it's like, I'm around these excellent entrepreneurs that I get the pleasure of talking to every week. And I just kind of stumbled in, but then I realized, oh, we all kind of stumbled in. So that was the cool thing. It was like, okay, great. Like, it was now not me and it still was me looking up to these people, but then it kind of put us at a more of a peer-to-peer level. And that is where like a lot of the collaborative content and concepts and partnerships and all the things really unfold. And you're like, okay, that was cool, because, you could be this young guy that walks into the room with a podcast mic and everyone's like, all right, thanks for the time. And then they just kind of leave you alone and never want to like do any work together. But it really did put us at that peer-to-peer moment. And I think that was unexpected. I was really expecting to see this like well-defined group of entrepreneurs who just had it all figured out. And in reality, we're all just like, yeah, man, I tried this one thing that made total sense, and then it ended up not working the way we expected it. And we had to pivot and we had to do this. And it just is so cool to see the stories and the journeys behind everybody's company, because a lot of us, stumbled here.
Yeah, I have yet to meet the entrepreneur who came up with a perfect plan and took it to market and just saw it unfold the way they had expected. I mean, my personal experience, like, I'm an engineer. I came from sort of the tech background, and some almost came up with the solution before we found the problem. And I still consider it a quite a lucky thing that the market took to it, even if we didn't have much knowledge of it when we started either.
100%. And I don't know about you, but like when I grew up as a kid, entrepreneurship wasn't a thing. It wasn't like something anyone introduced me to, told me about. Like, there was small business or like I remember people talking about starting a small business, but then I remember looking as a kid and like seeing the Amazon warehouses or seeing these bigger companies that we are all using today, and never understood that that was a startup, that was an idea, that they raised capital, that they did this, and like it was not this big perfect business, quote unquote perfect. Perfect business that we all see. It really did have an interesting and very scrappy beginning, and no one explained that. So when getting exposed to entrepreneurship for myself, I was kind of like, had this expectation that I had to have my business to be perfect right out the gate. You know, it had to look like Amazon. It had to look like Microsoft. It had to look like, you know, these big companies. In reality, like entrepreneurship really wrecked me, because then I was like, you know, it's not the ride I was expecting. And so it's one of those interesting things that you kind of like discover, but was right in front of you the whole time as a kid. Is like, oh, just no one ever explained it to me. So yeah, kind of interesting.
Yeah, I can really relate to that. Like, so as you know, like I grew up in the south of Sweden, and entrepreneurship just wasn't a thing. Like, all the companies had been around for 100 years, and they were big, and they might have started as a startup at some point, but it was like so far away. And so it wasn't like part of the conversation. It wasn't sort of like you go to engineering school and then you see people being drawn into it. It just really didn't exist. And I think like one of the really good things that's happened in the world, and I think, you know, when you read the news, you think the world is bad and getting worse. But I think the reality is that it is getting better all the time, right? If you just zoom out, like, it is getting better all the time. And one of the really good things is this, like, lowering of barriers to entrepreneurship. Like, so what you talked about, like getting $50 for a microphone, and that's what you needed to start a podcast, right? That might be true today, but I'm not sure if that was true maybe 10 years ago or 20, or maybe 10 years ago, but maybe not 20 years ago. And as well, like the whole first internet boom, right? Like anyone with a computer could sort of do a website and could sort of start a business. And I think when these barriers to entry are really collapsing, then people get started. And then once you're started, it's just like one domino after another, if you're lucky and you keep being lucky. But that, I think, creates a lot more, of a an ecosystem, and that in itself actually, you know, we help each other out regardless of where we are on the journeys. And I think I'm happy for the college students of today. Like they don't know how good they have it.
yeah, exactly. It's a good point. A very good point.
One of the things we talked about just like very briefly before we started the recording, and maybe we should have recorded actually, because I think it's a good part. But we talked about like how media has changed, right? Like, so when I started Minut, video for me was not like a very natural medium. But I think for you it was when you started the podcast. And hospitality traditionally has not been a very media driven industry. Do you think that's changing? Are you part of that change?
I would love to claim that I'm part of that change for sure, but I don't know. Cause like when I first started, you know, I get a lot of people asking me, and this is how really Hospitality FM, the podcast network, really started, was people asking me a lot of the same questions over and over again. And one of the things is like, I always tell people, it's like, man, when I started in 2018, it was not a podcast with video. It was a cheap mic that barely worked. And I'm pretty sure, honestly, like if I go back and listen to some of the episodes, didn't work because it was still really bad audio. And then we were recording on Skype and we had no cameras on. I remember sitting down with Matt Landau, and he was one of the first vacation rental people I interviewed when it was starting to go full time. And I remember him asking me like, hey, are we going to record this? Like, you know, I think Zoom was starting to become a thing, and I was just used to Skype. I just knew Skype, camera off, mic on. And that was the conversation. We had no headphones. We had no video clips. If you wanted to clip part of the conversation to promote that episode, it was an audiogram. So you get like a waveform around an image, and that would be it. Like that was basically it. Maybe some captions if you were patient enough to edit the captions and to include that into the audiogram. But it really has changed significantly. Especially with, you know, obviously like you look at the Joe Rogans or the Alex Coopers, right? Like they created this medium of a YouTube first podcast rather than an audio first. And maybe not the first ones, but definitely were in early enough to get onto that rise of consumer content. But for hospitality, like B2B is tough. B2B is not sexy content. It's not massive audience. It's not like we're not getting millions of downloads an episode, right? Like that is attractive for a media business. Audience is key. That's how you monetize. It's how you grow. It's all the things. But when you're in a B2B sector, this isn't huge. So there was a lot of learning along the way to really then get to the point where we are with video being first. And I think it's kind of the mainstream content and media went video first, and we kind of had to follow. That's kind of the way I take it, because, you know, if we kept doing the way we were recording, you know, on Skype and audio only, I don't know if we would, you know, have gotten to the point where we are today or anything like that. So, I definitely think it's changed. I definitely think that video is important, but I also give a cautious warning to people about content, and specifically video and short form, just because I know for myself, it's great to create, it's great content. Like I know we're all very excited, creative entrepreneurs. We love our industry. We love what we do. But look, this is kind of a tangent, but I'll say that we're kind of a slave to the algorithms now. YouTube, the way that they promote short form over long form. You look at Instagram Reels on Facebook as well. Twitter, I believe, has video, or X. All these short form video platforms really are kind of telling us what they want versus what we want. And so that's where I think it's like, you have to really be careful. It's like you can get, I've personally lost interest in the business over time as we really realize, like, hey, we're creating content to please YouTube, to please TikTok, to please Instagram, not to please our listeners or to please the people that have been following or listening for a long time, or people that are on LinkedIn and like love our content. So I don't know, to really kind of not go on too much of a tangent. It's been a wild ride and change. So I think we've kind of had to adapt as mainstream media has really changed over time.
I think that's an interesting tangent, if you will. And of course, you and I, like, we're doing B2B content, right?
Yeah.
Like we are here for our specific audience, and it's measured a little bit differently than maybe mainstream views. Like for us, the most important thing is not maybe maximizing the number of eyeballs, but getting to the right people. And maybe there is like an opportunity to break a little bit away from the algorithm, or at least not optimize for it. So if you're taking that view, like what is good content? Like what is good B2B content where it maybe doesn't resonate with the widest number of people, but it resonates with the target group that is very key and that you're trying to reach?
Yeah, that's where it started to really become, I think from my perspective, with a lot of our podcasters that would join the network, they would come to us and say, like, because we had a minimum of audience saying like, hey, you have to, in order for us to pitch your podcast to a sponsor or an advertiser, we have to have this much audience per month in terms of downloads or views, if they're mostly video. And a lot of them would come to us and say, well, we're not there. We're almost there. And I would always say, like, don't get upset or frustrated that you're not at that 5,000, 10,000 plus mark, right? Like, be okay if you have 1,000 listeners. Be okay if you have 1,000 viewers or 100 viewers, because like you said, the quality of that audience is better than the quantity of an audience that maybe doesn't give a crap about software or pricing for a vacation home, or you name it, right? All the topics that we talk about throughout the industry. And so for me, I think the quality piece is really important, but that's the thing you have to like really train your brain. And then you also, if you are trying to make money from the media, you have to train your advertisers or your partners to say like, look, we are not going to be a Joe Rogan or a Alex Cooper or a Smartless or whatever podcast that, generates this many eyeballs or ears, but really we're going to generate a quality list of eyeballs or ears, especially if they could pair that up with, an email list, maybe a private Facebook group or a LinkedIn group. I know a lot of people started a podcast, launched their own event, their own conference. That's really successful, because then literally if you can get 300 people in a room, I know plenty of brands that would pay a good amount to be in that room with those 300 people from that audience. So I think quality is for sure the most important piece, but it really becomes like, how do we measure that quality? How do we measure that engagement? Because it just looks different than mainstream. So yeah, it's a lot has changed, but I think if you are looking to start media, or if you are in media, that is where the real gold is. It's just not as sexy. It's not as, it's not going to be as flashy as a Sirius XM partnership with X, Y, and Z podcast, or a Spotify partnership with whatever brand. It's really going to be just between you and a smaller group. But yeah, quality over quantity for days.
Are there other principles apart from quality that companies should make sure their content has, like, or principles that they should follow to make sure that there's value both for the audience and the company itself?
Yeah, I would say, like, don't silo your content. That was the biggest learning lesson for me too, was that we had an email list, we had our YouTube channel, we had our audio platforms, and then we had our socials, and we would create content specifically for those channels, which is great. You should obviously create for those channels, but we would be afraid to, I wouldn't say maybe be afraid, but we definitely had a part of the company history where we didn't embed podcasts or clips into our email newsletter, and we didn't like use the ecosystem to the full advantage. And I think now it's no longer just hey, I'm going to start a podcast, or hey, I'm going to start a YouTube channel. It needs to be, hey, I'm going to start this content machine, basically ecosystem. Cause if you look at the way you could repurpose the clips and the audio and, get the in-person experiences, whether through meetups or conferences or whatever, right? Like, there's a lot of different touch points that this content can really hit, from terms of distribution, and it can grow your audience. It can grow your awareness. It can grow, your community and the people that you collaborate with content on. So, just look at the flywheel of content, how it really is a ecosystem rather than just a siloed thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And one trend that we obviously picked up on is founder-led content. As a startup, make the founder a bit visible, make the company maybe a bit more human. You are in a way also founder-led content, right? Like, as an entrepreneur, and then like the host yourself. Do you think this is the next frontier? Is this becoming a requirement for all sorts of business?
I would like to say yes, but we've seen a lot of businesses that put their CEO or their founder in the media seat, and they're not good, right? Like, maybe they're just more introverted, they're more numbers persons or people. I would say listen to your marketing people. If they say, hey, actually, we're going to put somebody else in, maybe it's your COO or I don't know, whoever, probably just go with that. But I think every business now is starting to look at themselves as like kind of a Red Bull, where they portray and advertise that they make a drink and that's their business. But in reality, they're a media company, extreme sport media company. But I think that model has done well for a lot of companies, where they, are promoting a product, but they create experiences, they create media, and they marry the two very well. So that way it attracts an audience that then they can have their drink, or they can have their, whatever product there. But that is also, I think, something for like a lot of entrepreneurs to be aware of, is like, look, if you're not trying to create a media business, don't create a media business. If you are like, oh my gosh, there would be nothing worse than for me to be in a studio recording content or this and that, then you're most likely going to see that type of result when you go into it, is going to be kind of flat. So that I would say, just like, look at yourself as a media company if you think that works, and if you like the Red Bull approach, and if you like that type of setup. But honestly, like, if you're not good at it or maybe comfortable with it, I think it's a false expectation for us to put on founders that maybe are really just trying to create a good product, and to deliver good service to their customers. So
I think there's a lot of founders that probably hesitate to put themselves out there. I certainly was one. But you can also see, I could at least see, like, the
who
value
gave you the
of
push?
it. It was our, it was the team really, who said, I think this is a new way of doing content. And we specifically, we have a new product that hasn't quite launched yet. It's a fire and carbon monoxide alarm that is connected so that you can remotely audit it. And our reason for doing this product was that we realized that very few short-term rentals, unfortunately, were safe for guests. Mm-hmm. And it's not that anyone isn't coming at it with like the best intent. The problem is that 1 in 20 or 1 in 50 guests tend to tamper with smoke alarms for whatever reason. Some nick them, some maybe have a chirp in the middle of the night, take them down. Some burn some food, gets a false alarm and pulls out the battery. Probably is that then no one checked them. And that meant that sort of compound over time, which meant that these sensors weren't working. And unfortunately, we found this like really big gap in terms of how safe you are in a hotel versus how safe you are in a short-term rental. Mm-hmm. So we decided to make a product to fix this. And then when we talked about, okay, how do we launch this? And we found it really difficult to come up with like a marketing campaign or paid acquisition to talk about a problem like this. So then we thought, okay, well, maybe the way to speak about this is to do more about this type of content where we just, have a little bit more time to lay out what the issue is and why you're doing what you're doing. And so that's really how it came. Like we wanted to take Minut into guest safety. And we wanted to be able to talk about guest safety. And I think that was like the starting point. It's long been lost. But that was the idea and that's why we started. And then honestly, I enjoy it now. Yeah.
So that's the thing is like, you enjoy it and it becomes this great medium. And I think it's worth doing because you were telling me behind the scenes too, like, the response that you guys are getting from the content, versus a blog post maybe back in the day, is significantly different. And, like you said, you're enjoying it. You're having fun. And I think that's a great, thing. Like I think a lot of, at least for me, I realized I loved the art of conversation, if that makes sense, where you have an endpoint that you want to get your guest to get to or some big conclusion or, climax. But then the way you get them there through different questions and comments and conversation, intentionally are like you are like basically carving this conversation out on your own. It's so fun, it's so cool, and it's like one of the most stimulating things for me mentally, where like I can walk away from this episode and be like, man, I could think about it all day and think about different, I wish we talked about this, we could talk about that, blah blah blah. Like there's so many fun things to go into. So sorry, I'll get off my excitement high horse here, but yeah, it's a great thing to do. I think the art of conversation is really getting lost sometimes. So yeah. Anyways, that's my last tangent.
and I think in this context as well, trust is super important, right? Like how as a company do you build trust with a customer? Like you can obviously do it with brand over a long time, but I think people don't trust companies per se, at least not at the start, but they do trust people. We sort of come at it with a default to trusting whoever is in front of you for good or bad. I think mostly good. And I think it can help with that as well.
100%. Yeah. Especially from a business standpoint. If you're starting a podcast as a company, 100%. I agree. If you're starting as an individual, like I was, I think it's a little bit different because you're not coming with a product or a service, but, maybe you are, but yeah, for most people, I think trust is really important when it's a company led or a business led podcast. Even with the founder in front, I think that's what makes that trust part better, is like, that is the founder. This is Nils that created Minut. Like this isn't, some hired gun that's just really here to make media for the sake of part of his job,
Another thing we spoke about just before is, you are now also an exited founder. So a very exclusive club. You've sort of done like the full arc. So when you look ahead for the next 5 years, like what is the next thing you're seeing? How do you think about media content and the distribution in the context of hospitality?
Yeah. Excuse me. I know for me, the way I see it, the next 5 years, content media is really going to become personal. And I mean that by in person, not personal preference wise, but really personal as in like, we have been craving, through the time of COVID and now the time of AI. Excuse me one second. Gosh, I need water, but I forgot it. That in this time of AI, in the time of COVID that we spent years in, almost, it feels like, the in-person experience is really going to become super important. And we've already seen that today in 2025/2026, in-person experiences, events, live tourism, something that Skift covers quite often, is going to become, I think, where media is going to live. I think, these interviews remotely are going to be great and people are still going to do them. This probably will never go away, but people are going to be craving that in-person experience. They're going to be craving experiences in general where they're with other people. There's networking, there's collaboration, there's fun, there's unique things that they get to post about on their socials and their channels and their content platforms. So I think in the next 5 years, if you look at, I think we're going to see a lot of media companies start creating in-person experiences or creating spin-offs. The owner of Formula One is a media company. The owner of WWE is a media company. Like, they are all on, like, they're media companies, but they're focused on in-person. So I think that's going to be the next thing. I think this type of content will be powered by in-person experiences because we're just craving it so much. And the barrier of entry for AI is getting so low that I think we're all tired of the AI slop. Yes, it'll get better. There's going to be a certain point in history that we're all going to be able to point at and be like, that's when AI changed and actually got good. But I'm in the camp of AI is not that great. I'm underimpressed. I'm underwhelmed. And I think I'm just tired of seeing the crappy LinkedIn posts with the crappy AI generated image and the like clear lack of personality in terms of some of the content. And so with that happening, I think it's just going to push more and more people into in-person experiences.
I think that's right. 100%. Like when you multiply anything by, 1 million or 1,000, it loses its value. And so it becomes commodified very, very quickly. And, you just can't do that with in person. So, I think you're right. And I hope you're right too, because I think that's the world I would prefer to live in. Let's talk a bit more about your company and how you exited, because we talked about how you sort of started it almost by accident, but I imagine an exit is not by accident. Can you talk us through like how the opportunity came up and why you decided to pursue it rather than stay independent?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think for me, the acquisition kind of was almost accidental. It wasn't something I sought out in the beginning. But for those that know, so the company was called Hospitality FM. That was our podcast network. And Rafit, the CEO and founder of Skift, which is a big B2B media company in hospitality and travel, DM'd me on LinkedIn. And he was like, hey, really love what you built. I like the Good Morning show. Like, have you thought about, doing this with us? Or like, have you thought about like doing partnerships and other things like that? So it started out as kind of like hey, would you be willing to help us out with our podcasts in a partnership kind of area? And of course I was like, yeah, Skift, I've been reading you guys since I was behind the front desk as a front desk agent in like 2014-15 era. So of course, like, I've looked up to them forever. We used a lot of their articles to inspire topics for other content that we create. So it was almost like a perfect pair from that LinkedIn message, which was a little over a year prior to us actually selling. So if that gives any listener some perspective, it was over a year from that DM to the actual time we closed. And so over that year, really I kind of pitched Skift. I was like, hey, we'll take on your production. We'll take on this. And they got a proposal from me and they ended up not going with me. So they were like, all right, but come to our event. We want to see you at our data and AI summit. And I was like, okay, I'll come to the summit. And we started dating, really. It was a dating process. It was like ask questions, get coffee, have lunch, and then fly home and then come to the next event and maybe get to shake hands for a little bit. But it wasn't like an extensive process. And then to give listeners maybe some insight, I was getting a little burnt out. I'm not going to lie. Like, I was definitely tired I would say this time, April, May of 2025. And I was like, man, I need a break. And so I told my team, I'm going to go camping, hiking, remote. I'm going to like not basically work for a month or two and, just like, I'll do admin stuff. And through that time, I found a lot of peace just on my own, just trying to get, more rejuvenated, some rest, some recovery, kind of pondering a reflection of like, what do I do? Like, do I pursue the Skift route, or do I pursue to keep going by myself and self-funded, or do I, kind of have this back out moment and say, this is where it ends. And for me, during that reflection time, it was just super important to take the time first off, because entrepreneurs really struggle to take their own personal time off. So that was kind of the important thing. But two, they kind of Skift and I, during that time, I think stopped talking as much. And so I just kind of sent them an email and was like, look, I've taken some time off. I've reflected on where the business is, and they've already seen under the hood. Like, I've already kind of revealed all my secrets. And, I said, look, if you guys want this, I'm in, but if not, I'm not sure what to do. And that's fine. But at the end of the day, like, this is the only route I'm going to take if you guys are interested. If not, then I'll just end up probably closing the business down, or maybe, not minimizing it, but like kind of peeling some pieces off that we didn't need. We tried to grow really quickly in 2025 and just took on way more than we could chew. And thankfully they responded appropriately. So they said, hey, we're actually interested. We're acquiring another company that's bigger than you. So that's why we've been kind of ghost, is because we've been doing all the due diligence with them, and it all worked out. So, July 7th, or end of July 2025, we announced the acquisition with Skift and, their other company that they acquired called Women Leading Travel. And it's been fun ever since. It's been a fun journey. Yeah. But, hopefully I didn't go too long on that, but it was just really a time of really needing to reflect on where I was, because I was self-funded. I was, no venture capital, no private equity, no investors. And you can only go so many times of like, how many times do I have to max out my credit cards to like keep the company going? So it was just that perfect moment for me to kind of say, do I want to step back, or do I want to make a pivot and change?
So now that you've seen the full arc, and massive congratulations, by the way, like, it's probably 1% that goes to the finish line there. But having seen that full arc, if you were to start again today, what would you do differently?
Ooh, great question. I probably would slow down. I think that was what really made me burn out, is that I was just go for so long, and that we were trying to grow so fast that we weren't maximizing revenue or operation efficiency or other things that needed that maximization or attention from me and the team. In reality, I was kind of like a fat kid in a candy shop, where I just saw all the opportunity and I wanted to grab as much of it as I could before my mom said no, or whatever happened, right? Like, that was kind of the approach that I wish I had slowed down. So that way it was, that way we were maximizing what we were doing, but we were able to make additional changes or pivots, or see areas of new opportunity better, without just kind of trying to seize it all in one night, in one day. And I would also say, for me, I think we had a interesting financial model. Like, we were making a lot of money from advertisers, but then we were making money from production. And why I ended up really getting burnt down, like not loving the company, is because we became, as like sponsorship slowed down, because a lot of companies are either venture funded or private equity funded, or however they're getting their funding, had kind of stopped in our industry for a while. They went through a lull. And so when that happens, marketing dollars freeze, and podcast advertising is one of those first things to be frozen or cut off from a marketing budget. And so as that happened, not that we lost all sponsor revenue, but as we lost sponsor revenue, we had to increase production, and that would make up ways for not letting go anyone on our team. That would make up ways to keep our costs paid for. But Nils, I'm not gonna lie, I hated running a production company, because it really, like, you're just doing the things that they're not sexy. They're not fun. You're really repeating yourself over and over again because people don't listen or retain things as they used to. So yeah, that was really like my thing. I was like, I wish I didn't create that nightmare for myself, because then who knows, I maybe would have still loved the business as much as I did the day one we started it. So that's kind of my advice, or the things that have changed.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Don't do a hardware startup next.
Yeah, I think I'm going to avoid startups for a little bit. Just enjoy the corporate life for now.
Yeah. And finally, last question. Every entrepreneur has a crazy and unexpected story from the time of running your business. Which one is yours?
Oh, man. I would say that it was just the time of running a vacation rental management company and a media company all at once. And we had, obviously the holidays are never as peaceful and quiet as a property manager would like. And so I just remember being like, oh, I finally get this break. I get this time off during the holidays. It was like around Christmas time. And it ended up just being a complete nightmare with our properties, with guests, with maintenance, with natural disasters due to snow or a storm. And then on top of that, we had a really tough year with the media company. So it was like we had 2 advertisers cancel their contract during this break, and it was like, oh my gosh, you weren't supposed to cancel. You were had another 6 months run on your contract. And just a lot of that at once, where you're kind of like, hey, I'm supposed to be enjoying this peace and quiet with my family, and my phone is just nonstop blowing up. So nothing crazy in particular. I was like, a wild story of a staff sabotaging the company or anything crazy, but it was just, there was definitely moments and periods of time where it just was all hands on deck, never stopping, never slowing down, never getting the break. And just, baptism by fire, I think.
Well, thank you so much for joining, and thank you for being so generous with your experience. It was truly a great conversation.
Of course. Well, thanks for having me, and it's kind of nice to be on the other side, but I'm excited to get you back on our podcast and get to grill you with the questions next time.
Anytime.
Thank you for listening to Minute by Minute. If today's episode gave you fresh insight, be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Share this episode with your team and follow us on social media to continue the conversation and exchange your own operational stories. To learn more about privacy-first property protection, visit Minut.com. Until next time, make every minute count to maintain your property's safety.